racing YouTube channel. So it's been brought to our attention at JDH HQ, located here in the garage, and obviously Daniel will give you a tour at some point, no doubt. We'll put it up on the YouTube channel. But it's been brought to our attention that we've never really explained how the Weasel came about and why it was called the Weasel. Now, we did briefly touch on it. We did the live draw. This is going back to last year, where we gave away some beanies. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an update. And what we'll do is, as I'm talking through it, Daniel will at some point when he edits the video, he'll put in little pictures, little clips, just to show you obviously the progress and where the Weasel kind of started to the point at which we're at now. And it has come quite a long way from when we first started. So if we rewind probably the best part of 3 years ago, probably maybe 4 years ago, Daniel bought a Mk1 caddy with a view to put in full motion in it, and therefore we called it the commotion. And it was actually not long after that I got offered a Mk1 caddy, I would say shell, rolling shell, from a guy over in Colchester way. And initially I wasn't really interested, and then he kind of said, look, you know, £350. So I was like, do you know what? Why not? What the hell? Let's go and have a look at it. Went down, had a look, and it was a little bit rough and ready. And that's where the rough and rusty racing kind of slogan that's got the back of some of the shirts came from. So anyway, so we went down, had a look at it, and I thought, do you know what? It's too good an opportunity to pass up. So I had it, brought it back to the workshop, and then literally case of, right, what we're going to do with it. And I think at this point we actually went away on holiday. This is all pre-COVID time. And like you do, all good ideas are formed over a few drinks, but it was all inclusive holiday. So we were sitting in the pool, me and Daniel, and literally came up with this master plan to do almost like a scrap heap challenge. You know, can we build
roadkill?
Well, yeah, in fact, yeah, it was actually roadkill. Can we resurrect this caddy into something that runs and drives so we can take up the strip in a week? Because we both had a week's holiday booked. So I started amassing a couple of parts on top of what I already had, of which, if I point down to the front, this was the engine that I already had sat in the corner of the garage, which is a Ford 460 big block, mated to a C6 transmission, and it was a runner. And Daniel will put a video in proving that it ran. So in its first guys, we literally were just trying to push out the door as quick as we could. We had loads of box section kicking around from various other bits and pieces. So I made a very rudimentary box section chassis. The thing could have been a blooming demolition derby, there's no two ways about it. It's nowhere near as light as this, but boy, you could probably ram raid your local cash point with it and get away with it. So we built it, and again, within about a week and a half, we basically managed to get a running vehicle. The only thing really required was steering, which we were sort of messing around with, and I think basically work life took over, and it kind of, I suppose, mothballed really at that point there. And then, it would have been probably
like 2019.
Yeah, 2019, maybe thereabouts. I think at that point, all of a sudden, we had the idea to basically crack on and build this in sort of bigger and better form. But going back to the name Weasel, so the reason we called it the Weasel was because when we bought it from Colchester, in the back of the bed was all sorts of rubbish from the previous owner. It hadn't cleaned it out. There was dead rodents and all sorts in there, and that's where the Weasel basically came from. It was quite interesting, as I remarked the other day actually, when we towed back the other project, as you're going down the road and you've got all the contents of the bed blown out the back. Yeah, that was an interesting drive back with stuff falling off. So anyway, so progress onto this, sort of 2019 onwards was probably the point at which we actually formulated some proper plans, decided what we were going to do, embarked on, you know, buying some decent kit and equipment, you know, getting the welders, getting the tube bender, and basically freeing up this space in the workshop to crack on and get it done. And you know, the first thing, we made a few mistakes in the early days on a couple of chassis. What I will say is the best thing you ever do is get yourself the rule book. You cannot go wrong if you follow the rule book. And then if you speak to the guys who are the chassis inspectors, they will guide you through the process. Very knowledgeable, brilliant guys. I can't fault them for the expertise they've thrown our way in what has been quite a steep learning curve. And I think if you go back and look at the videos, certainly for the Mode Pre, we're up to about what, part 6, part 7 now?
Part 7, I think.
Yeah, part 7 now. You'll be able to see that the lessons kind of learned on this, we basically put into practice on the Mode Pre, to the point where literally we built the chassis with probably about, I'm looking at the box on the floor down there, we've probably got a couple of metres of offcuts and that's it. It really is, I think, quite good in my opinion, what we've done in a very short space of time, and obviously that build's progressing. But what it has enabled us to do then is, as we've developed this car, we've basically changed things to be more in keeping with the rule book, more in keeping with what is the norm within the drag racing world. So in the first iteration we made the chassis, we had a few bars in the wrong place, and to use the words the chassis inspector didn't turn around and say, have you got a rule book? So we scrapped that chassis, that went. It wasn't quite as good as this one, shall we say. That's fine, you've got to start somewhere. So that went. We then basically built the chassis table because we were just doing it off of axle stands, which wasn't the best. Daniel built the chassis table, and then I don't know if you've seen the clips, we then built a bigger one behind, which is what we'll use in the future, because obviously it gives us more options, for doing mounting the wheels and transmissions and that sort of stuff. So this has been through a few guys, and like I say, Daniel put up some clips throughout this video to basically show you where we went sort of from and to now. So where to start? Where to start? Let's start at the front. The front's been through quite a few changes. The one thing that hasn't really changed is, well actually it has, I lie, is the engine. Because if you go back in some of the previous clips, we were going to use the 496 Mopar lump with tunnel rams, and that's what you'll see on the Facebook page. I think, Dan, you've got that as a profile pic still, if you change it to
No,
this.
it's the cover photo still, yeah.
Yeah, so it's still the cover photo in there. I mean, sweet looking engine, and I hope it gives the numbers that I want it to when I'm using the Mopar. However, we want to go forced induction, so basically we decided to move that out of the way, go with the big block Ford. So it starts at 460, and then the plan is to put a 557 kit into the Ford engine, which will take it out, and then you can already see, you're looking at the front there, we've got the intake, we're going twin turbo, and we've got the Holly inlet at the top there with the 105mm
102. Yeah,
throttle body, something like that. So that's the engine. At the front we've gone through a couple of guises. So the first guise was BMW shocks, which had is all fully adjustable. You could do your camber on it, you name it. The only thing that was a fixed point really would have been the wishbones that Daniel made up, or the A-frames, whatever you want to call it. We've ditched that in favour of going strange, and I think I've said in one of the previous videos, if you've seen that. The reason for this is because, as we'll touch on the back end, we do have a strange rear axle, and my thinking, my thought process is that we'll literally stick with strange throughout. It's tried and tested, we know what the parts are, we know we get the parts from, and there's a huge amount of tuning advice out there on the internet, and more importantly through the links we've established with the likes of Jeff Hauser, etc. So that's why we've gone down this route. So what it has enabled us to do is basically refabricate the front. We cut it off, and Daniel again will put a picture in, and then you'll see obviously how we changed from that front end to this front end, which is slightly more traditional, but also you'll see that there's the height difference in the front chassis. Tubes they come out from sort of below the dash bar out towards the front inner chassis rails. It's dropped all down because the height of the shocks is a lot less. So then moving back from that, what we've then got is my able assistant Daniel comes around to the side. So we'll talk you through the back end of the motor. What we're trying to build is something that we can take down the strip, produces a huge amount of horsepower that we can fine tune. Because what I don't want to do is everything's got to be done on the budget, I appreciate that, but I want to try and build everything as best I can bulletproof. So it gives us more time to test and tune and get it down the strip rather than worry about replacing parts as we go. So we ditched quite early on the C6 transmission. That was never going to cut the mustard, and we kind of went around, spoke to a few people, and in the end went through Jeff Hauser Racing, who swears by Hughes transmissions. So what we've basically got is behind the alley mid plate, which goes onto our bars, as you can see there. We're still in the process of fabricating that. We've got the Hughes Pro Mod transmission, so it's got all your billet internals. This thing is rated to an excess of 2,500 horsepower. Trans brake, so we can literally just let go of the button and off we go. The only thing we haven't got in there at the moment is torque converter, and again we've been advised to wait until we've actually built the motor and we know the full specs of the motor to then get the torque converter to then complete that sort of combo package there, because that's very crucial to how this thing's going to launch and what it's going to do further on down the strip. Okay, so moving back, and again, Daniel will put the pictures up of obviously how the build's progressed. We've got loads of pictures that we've taken along the way as to how we did the dash bar, the main cage, moving back into the funny cage itself. Now, some people might look at the funny cage and say, that looks quite big, and to a certain extent it is quite big, and the reason for that is because both myself and Daniel are best part 6'3" tall, and packing a few pounds, well I certainly am. So I wanted something that basically enabled us, with all our gear in the seat and our helmet, to have enough crash protection without being squeezed in there. So that basically is sort of the main compartment of the Weasel. And then coming back, we've got this, I'm going to call it my superstructure. So basically we have completely fabricated the rear end, and we've got some, as you'll see from the pictures, some different 4-link chassis brackets as to what we originally had. These allow us significantly more adjustability to get our angle of the link bars more tuned, that's it, dialed into the vehicle. At the moment we've roughly got the bottom bar set to 0 degrees, and then we worked out the, I don't remember the name for it now. Basically I ran a string line from where the cam is straight down through the vehicle, down to the rear pinion, and then the intersect where this then goes through that line to give us our sort of anti-squat, or whatever you want to call it. Again, there's loads of stuff. If you want to put a link in there, it's entirely up to you. Maybe, maybe not. So there is also a whole science behind it, so it's not fully set up. We've only roughly set it up to where we think it needs to be at the moment. So the back end then, so this has been through a couple of guises. So again, going back to the pictures, I'm thinking back in its first guise, we were chasing to get ourselves under the bed of the rear caddy, because we want this thing to basically look as standard as we can for a Mark 1 caddy without going too sort of wide. You might think, how on earth is that going to look standard when we've cut it into 3 significant pieces? There is a master plan for that, and in the future, fingers crossed, what we'd like to do is have a fiberglass body shell or carbon fibre. We can remove the section stock to make it easier to then get access to all the components. But for now, the rusty Weasel will live on. So the back end then, we originally started with some Goodyear tyres, which were 17s I believe, for the widths, and we really kind of struggled with the sheer size of the tyres and trying to get an axle under sort of the magical number for the rear bed. And it's just one of those things that we messed around with a couple of combos. We had a Mark Williams, we tried the axle from the Mopri under there.
We had the 8.8 as well.
Oh yeah, we had the 8.8 as well, yeah, the narrowed 8.8, which was the first iteration, the first axle that was on this vehicle. And literally, again, it's just through chatting with Jeff Hauser. He said, you know what, he said, you know, what you're trying to build, the power you're trying to put down, and the width you're trying to go, it's almost kind of a one-stop shop. So we went for the strange axle. Not a cheap piece of kit, but it perfectly suits our needs. We've got the wheels under the bed, so it all works out nicely. We're running 411 ring gear in the back with a locker. It's a full strange dragster axle using 4-link bars. So again, these things are rated and built to take significant horsepower. So again, hopefully building that longevity into the vehicle, so we don't have to worry about the back end. Because that was one of the issues with the Mk1, and I think we've probably spoken about that in other videos as to what I've done there. We did have a set of gas coilovers in the back, and again, wanting to keep all the suspension kind of standard, and again, having spoken to various people, taking advice on spring rates, what I did was I ordered some Strange double adjustable rear shocks. There you go, Daniel. There's them on the floor with, I think it's £120 rate springs at the back end. I was advised based that so as the suspension is allowed to work, or the tyres allowed to work around the suspension, because these are the wrinkle wall tyres. Back end wise then, we've got where we come down into our battery tray and then into the parachute mount. I'm going to be honest, we're going to redo this rear piece of the vehicle. We did this originally not based on the fact we're going to potentially run wheelie bars. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a little bit of a redesign. It won't look a million miles different from what we've got here, but we're going to look to take out what is the battery tray compartment there. And then will allow us to run the wheelie bars obviously down and through. We're going to move all this up, and Daniel, you'll put some pictures in again, and you'll be able to see that these bars that run left to right are what we originally slid the rear bed onto, and then we're going to put fasteners that basically bolts it back onto here. So again, we can remove the left and right side of the car.
Or does nothing.
What are the goals with the Weasel then? So we've got 3 goals in mind throughout the progression of the Weasel. The first one and our main goal is to set an undisputed quarter-mile record for the Mk1 caddy platform. I believe it's 9:85 or there or thereabouts at the moment. Basically, we want to run 7.5 seconds in its first guise and set that record. Our second sort of record that we're aiming for, so we're going to race in the VWDRC, which we actually got a banner up there for. And I think the club record currently is 7:97. Again, we want to break that record. But for the meantime, we're just looking to get out and running probably late 23, early 24 if all things go well. And we'll be competing in VW Pro. That'll do it for now. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Drop any comments below, things you'd like to see or things we can improve on throughout any of our videos, as we're always learning. And then please do head over to our socials. So Facebook is @JDH Racing and our Instagram is @JDH Racing 94.